Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right. Hello again, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on. Pleasure to be back as always. Happy to be here. Looking forward to diving into today's episode. And today I really want to address what it is that causes a man to perceive you as low value, even when you know that you're high value. And I just want to start by saying that I know how potent this conversation is because I see it happening all the time. And, you know, I have the privilege of, with the women I work with in my program and so many of my connections and people I know and people I talk to on a regular basis, that like I have the pleasure of knowing so many incredibly high value women. And I want to start by just naming that in today's episode, I'm not suggesting that any of you, the listeners, or anybody is actually low value, because I know how gifted you are. I know how amazing you are. I know what you truly bring to a relationship. If you would get beyond the awkward phase of getting to know each other and really be in a committed connection with someone, I know what value you would bring. And so today's episode is not about, oh, you're low value and you need to learn how to be high value. No, today's episode is about this. It's about, I know you're high value. You know you're high value. Everyone in your life knows that you're high value, but something is happening in relationships with men where they don't see it. That's what this episode is about. This episode is about the pattern of engaging with someone, and slowly over the weeks that you've been engaging with them, they start to perceive you and a relationship with you as less and less valuable, to the point where they ultimately distance themselves. They say, I'm just not looking for something right now, or I just don't have the time, or I don't feel the connection I'm looking for, or maybe worst case scenario, they just ghost altogether. This episode is about dissecting what is happening in these interactions that is having someone who likely initially saw you as high value. Initially, they thought, wow, I'd really like to get to know this person. This person seems amazing. And then over the weeks that you're engaging with them through your messages, through your calls, through your dates, through whatever is happening between the two of you, they start to perceive the relationship as less and less value. They start to perceive you as less and less value as a partner. Even though you know that's not true, I know that's not true. So what's happening in these interactions? Because this is common. And if you've experienced this, you're not alone in this. And I speak with, like I said, so many of the ladies in my program and people I work with. I see this happen all the time. So what is happening in these interactions that is causing someone to perceive you with less value than you actually bring? That's what I want to break down today. And as I was preparing for today's episode, I was thinking about a recent conversation I had with one of the ladies in my program. And, she was talking about this guy that she met. I believe she met him online, and they were a little bit long distance. So they were messaging back and forth over the distance. And this person was following up with her every day, super consistent, expressing incredible interest in her, very much wanted to get to know her. They were very excited about meeting. They had this very almost, I don't want to say rigid, but very consistent communication, right? Like they would message each other within minutes, and they were very excited to see each other, and they got together, spent a weekend together. And then after that weekend, the energy was completely different. And I know many of you have probably experienced this. The energy suddenly completely different. He doesn't seem as interested anymore. He's a little more distant. He's taking longer to respond. The feelings that the excitement that he was so clear about before they met, he's clearly less excited after they met. Something happened that weekend. Something happened that completely altered the way that he perceived her. And so in today's episode, I want to talk about what it is that happens that causes that to occur for a man. What happens for a man in relationship with a woman that goes from excitement to indifference? That goes from, I'm messaging you immediately after you text, to you text and I feel this pressure and this uncertainty and this, I don't know what to say. I don't know if I want to feed this. I don't know if I want to engage with this. What happens from the sincere effort that he brings early on that has him start to withdraw afterwards? Because I want to say this, and this is no judgment, no shame here, but I want to say that it's possible to have his effort actually increase. It's possible that the more he gets to know you, the more he wants to know you. And I want to name this with a lot of love and a lot of compassion, is that, if this happens once, you might just meet some person who has really avoidant tendencies and they were excited out of the gate, but they withdrew. If it happens one time, then okay, maybe it's just a fluke. Maybe it's just a weird thing. But if you find this happening over and over and over and over again with men, if you meet someone, there's excitement, there's attraction, there's consistency, and then as the weeks go by, he becomes less and less consistent. He becomes less and less interested, and it fizzles out to a point where he just calls it off altogether. And if this has happened more than once, I want to lovingly suggest that there is something you are consistently bringing to a relationship that is changing your perceived value to men. And there's no shame in that. There's no judgment in that. I think maybe we've all been there at some point, right? And it's not even your fault. There are certain patterns that you have developed that make you feel safe in relationship with a man, but those same patterns that you cling to for safety are the very things that cause him to lose interest, are the very things that cause his interest to diminish. And in today's episode, I want to name some of those things. And I also want to break down what is it that actually needs to happen to have his interest increase, his excitement increase, to have him show up more consistent, more available, to want to spend more and more time with you, because I also see this happening all the time. Right? This isn't just the way men are. And I know a lot of women sometimes say men are just like that. They're just avoidant. They just don't care. They're just narcissistic, or whatever labels they put on it. And sure, is there a subset of men out there that are like that? Of course. But this is not just how men are. There are plenty of men who are married, plenty of men who are deeply devoted to their wives and are in loving, committed relationships. And there are plenty of women who are forming these relationships every day. And I want to say that wherever you see a pattern playing out in your life, and again, I say this with a lot of love and a lot of compassion, but wherever you see a pattern playing out in your life, the same kind of thing happening over and over and over and over again, well, you're the common denominator in that pattern. And that's not judgment, that's just a neutral reality. And you can also observe that, hey, this might be my pattern. This might be the pattern I see playing out in my life. But I also look around and I see that it's not happening to everyone. I might even have certain friends it's happening to them, and we get together and create an echo chamber and we pretend like it's happening to everyone. But it's not really happening to everyone. People are getting married all the time. My wife and I just hired a nanny, and she is a nanny part-time, and then she has a side job where she does hair and makeup for weddings. And I asked her, how many weekends are you booked for weddings? And she said, I'm booked every single weekend. Okay, lots of people are getting married. So it's not that it's the truth or it's the ultimate reality, but it's that we establish a pattern and we tend to operate in that pattern, and that pattern tends to play out in our lives over and over and over again. And what I want to do in today's episode is I want to illuminate that pattern, right? I want to illuminate what is the pattern that causes a man to slowly lose interest over the weeks that he knows you. And how do we work against that pattern, right? How do we break that pattern and turn it around to create the opposite, where he becomes more and more invested as he gets to know you? So that's what we're looking at today's episode. And thank you for being with me. If you're tuning into this conversation, then you're really courageous to even name this and look at this. And by the end of today's conversation, you're going to have a clear roadmap for exactly what needs to shift. So let's jump into this. I want to start by naming one of the most maybe potent misconceptions that leads to this. So many women feel that when she meets a man that she is deeply attracted to, when she meets a man that she says, oh my God, this is the kind of man that I want to be with, the kind of man I want to marry, the kind of man that my friends would love, my parents would love, the kind of man that I'll look good next to when we go to a party, and the kind of man that, he's capable and intelligent and successful and good looking and, whatever the check boxes are that are on your list. One of the biggest things I see where women end up shooting themselves in the foot here is they immediately feel like they need to earn the acceptance or approval of that man. And that approach, just that mindset, just that feeling in your body, what can I do to make him like me? What can I do to get him to want to see me again? How do I have to show up to show him that I'm good enough or I'm what he's looking for? The moment that is activated inside of you, it's already lowering your perceived value in the relationship. So I want to start by saying this. That man already thinks that you're good enough. If he didn't, you wouldn't even be on the date with him. Right? Like, that man has already decided, I think she's attractive. I like our conversations. She seems like a cool person. I like her pictures on the dating app or whatever. Like, whatever it was that transpired from the time you first connected with him to the point where you're on a date with him, whether you met on an app or some other way, or you've been having phone calls or whatever it is, whatever has transpired, he wouldn't be on that date if he didn't already think that you were good enough. So you're already starting at the level you need to start at. But if you don't own that level, your perceived value only goes down from there. And one of the biggest things that drops your perceived value is that he can sense you're trying to earn his acceptance, his love, his approval. You're trying to show or demonstrate that you're good enough for him. It's one of the most unattractive things. And I want to go back to this woman that I was sharing about earlier, the one who had connected with the guy and then they spent a weekend together, and then his energy completely shifted after that weekend. Because we were talking about some of the things that had taken place during that weekend. And she owned this, and I love that she owned it. This is one of the things I love about my coaching program and the conversations we have, is because there's such deep honesty. And I love the truth that these women speak. And it's so healing to name this truth, to also see that you're not alone in this truth, right? But she named this, and I love her courage for naming this. She said, if somebody had shown up with me the way that I showed up with him this weekend, I wouldn't be attracted to that person either. And this was just her true, honest, heartfelt reflection. And again, it takes so much courage to say something like that, right? So I just love that she had the courage to even name that. It's beautiful. And it's potent. Because here's the thing, and I'm going to make this about men, but it's really true for men and women. It's true for everybody. But he wants a partner that reflects the way that he would like to think of himself. And you, whoever the you is who's listening to this right now, you feel the same way, don't you? Right? Why don't you go date someone who's ugly? Why don't you go date someone who's broke? Why don't you go date someone who has no ambition, no motivation, no cool hobbies or interests, no friends, right? Why don't you date someone like that? It's because somebody like that doesn't reflect how you like to think of yourself. Why do we want to date an attractive person? Is because we would like to think that we are the kind of attractive person that would attract someone who's also attractive. I hope that makes sense, right? We want to date a partner who is like an external reflection of the way that we like to think about ourselves. He's on that date with you in the first place. He's spending time with you. He's talking to you. He's getting to know you in the first place because he on some level feels that you're the kind of person who would accurately reflect the way that he likes to think about himself. If that wasn't true, you would never even be interacting with him in the first place. So we've got to own that, right? We've got to own that right to exist in someone else's life. The moment that we begin feeling like we're below that person and we need to earn our way up to them, or we need to earn their approval, or we need to do something to garner their love, their attention, to be good enough for that, the playing field is no longer equal. And this is what happens is most people feel that, and then they try to overcompensate for it in these really weird ways. And something I'm going to touch on later, but I'll just say it now, is like, you cannot fake high value. This is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is we try to fake high value. We try to present ourselves as more than we believe we are. And we do that by pretending like we're busier than we are. Or we do that by saying things that try to hint at how high value we are. But when we're trying to overcompensate for a perceived inadequacy, what ends up happening is it just comes off as weird. And, you might fool somebody once, you might fool somebody twice, but you're not going to fool them 3 times. And like in the example I gave earlier, if you spend a whole weekend with someone, that's going to come out. They're going to see it. They're going to feel it. And they're going to be like, man, I was really excited about this person, but after this weekend, I just don't feel that great about them. So he wants to be with someone who reflects the way that he likes to think of himself. He wants to think that he's attractive. He wants to think that he's intelligent. He wants to think that he's fun to be around. He wants to think that he's worthy and he's valuable. And when somebody is subtly diminishing themselves in his presence, he starts to think to himself, not the kind of person I want to be with. And I want to address one of the most perhaps uncomfortable parts of this conversation, which is distinct between men and women. Because here's one of the biggest differences between the way that men are conditioned and the way that women are conditioned. Women are conditioned to value commitment. For a woman, commitment is a win, socially speaking. And I know a lot of women are going to probably push back against that. And I don't need a man, and I'm not desperate for commitment. And I get that. And I'm not saying that you are. But women are socially conditioned to view gaining a man's commitment as a win. And men are not socially conditioned to view gaining a woman's commitment as a win. Now, let me just say, as a married man, as a father, as somebody who has spent the last decade devoting myself and pouring myself into one woman, and I just want to say that is a huge win. So for all the men who are listening to this, let me say, even though we haven't been conditioned that way, a woman's love and commitment and devotion is one of the biggest wins you'll ever have in your life. And if you talk to any men who are married, who are fathers, who are they'll tell you single best decision they ever made was marrying their wife, right? So I'm not saying it's not a win, but I'm saying for women, it is culturally viewed as a win. For men, it is not. In many ways, I could do a whole podcast episode on this topic, but in many ways, a man committing is viewed as a loss within the culture. A loss of freedom, a loss of autonomy, a loss of the ability for sexual conquest, a loss of stature among other men. Oh, you're wifed up now. Oh, you're whipped, right? So there's all these social narratives that actually make men feel like commitment is a sacrifice. And I'm saying this because for a lot of men, it's not that they don't want commitment. I think, honestly, the majority of men do. And this is kind of the secret that men, they try to act tough and macho and, they try to act like that, but really they just want to love and be loved the same way everyone does. And this is where our culture is, toxic and fucked up in a lot of ways. So men do want commitment, but they're also dealing with the social pressure that says commitment is somehow a loss of status. And why is this important? It's important for women to know this because men don't take commitment lightly. Women often do take commitment lightly. And that's not a criticism of any individual woman. It's just the social reality. A lot of women are happy to get married, even if it's not to the right partner. A lot of women are happy to be chosen by someone, especially if he's someone of high status, especially if he makes good money, especially if her friends and family love him, even if he's not kind and nurturing and deeply safe for her. She'll often sacrifice all of that just for the status of being chosen by a man who's socially ranked high, who's highly ranked in the social order. Men aren't going to do that in the same way. Because men perceive commitment as a sacrifice, they want it, but they're highly selective about it. And here's the thing. This is another thing that women need to be very, very aware of, is that for a man, if he has your attention, if he's sleeping with you, if you want to be with him, he's already won socially. Whereas a woman actually needs to gain his commitment to win socially. A man can just go to the bar with his buddies and talk about how he hooked up with this girl last night, and he's already won socially. Maybe even more so than if he went to the bar with his buddies and said, I'm marrying this woman tomorrow. Is this a twisted, fucked up double standard? Yeah. Is it pervasive and is it real? Is it in the water that we're all swimming in? Yes, it is. And women need to be aware of that. Because, let me just call out one of the biggest mistakes here. A woman might sleep with a man thinking that if I sleep with him, it's going to deepen our connection. Because that's how she feels about it. She feels like when I go there with someone, it bonds me to that person. And I've actually done podcast episodes on how the hormones and things that are active in men and women, especially in the early stages of dating, especially if you have sex very early on, are very different. A woman produces a lot of oxytocin when she has sex with someone. This is essential for bonding with a mate, for protection. It's essential for producing children and bonding with children, right? So a woman produces a lot of oxytocin, which causes her to bond with a person, but testosterone, which is the male sex hormone, that's what drives his sexual interest in a woman, actually blocks the production of oxytocin. And so if a woman has sex with a man on a first date, she's going to likely bond with him deeply, and he's going to likely feel like he just won a conquest. She's going to walk away hoping that that experience is going to give him enough that he got a hold of, that he's going to want more, and he's going to feel like he already got what he came for. That's a difficult reality that women don't want to hear. I get that. And I don't mean any disrespect when I say that, but it is a reality, a fundamental biological difference between men and women. And so the point I'm making in all of this is I think women really need to understand what commitment is to a man. It's not a prize, it's a sacrifice. Now, this is the flip side of it. That when a man makes that sacrifice, he receives more than he gives. And that relationship with the woman will become like she's like the Lois Lane to his Superman, right? Like she becomes the muse. She becomes the fire in his soul. She becomes the center, the sun around which his solar system orbits, and she gives his life a direction and a focus and a purpose, and he can have a family, and he can have a home, and he can have something that motivates all of his endeavors. And it becomes something that rewards him greater than the sacrifice that he's making. But that's something that men only realize after they've been married for a long time. It's not something that single men really understand. So why am I saying this? Because this is part of what makes him lose interest. For him, the commitment equals a sacrifice, and so he has to view the relationship as something that is worth making that sacrifice. He has to view this relationship as something he is better with than without. And how does he do that? He does that, going back to something I stated earlier, he does that by feeling that this partner accurately reflects the way that he wants to think about himself. This is the kind of woman that makes me feel good about myself as a man. So what are those qualities? A woman's energy tells a man everything he needs to know. Her pace, her presence, her boundaries. This is what makes the difference between him perceiving her as lower value or him perceiving her as higher value. I've often talked about how so many women confuse being liked by a man with being respected by a man. This is a potent distinction. Because if a man likes you, he'll hang out with you, he'll spend time with you, he'll have fun with you, he'll have sex with you. And when he's done with you, he'll drop you. Brutal reality, I know. But when he respects you, even if he doesn't always like you, and this is not just about men and women, this is a reality of life, is sometimes to be respected by someone, you have to sacrifice being liked by them. That's a fundamental truth, right? It's like you walk into your boss's office and you say, listen, I need a promotion. I need to be making at least this amount. If you can't offer me that, I'm going to quit and I'm going to go find another job. Your boss may not like you very much when you say that, but they will respect you more. This is a fundamental truth about relationship. In order to be respected, sometimes we need to not be liked. Going back to the one fundamental mistake that I started with here. A woman, when she meets a man that she's attracted to, she often immediately thinks, how do I get him to like me? And then the game becomes about, how do I please him? How do I give him what he wants? And that's when she might sleep with him because he wants to have sex. And she thinks, well, if I show him how great I am in bed and what a great lover I am and all of this, then he'll want more of that. And going back to something I said, the moment you sleep with him, he already got what he came for. The question becomes, how do you show him the value of being in a relationship with you beyond sex? Because once he has sex with a woman, he already got that notch on his belt. He's already made the conquest. He already has the social approval of being able to go to his buddies and say, hey, I hooked up with this girl last night. And I know some of you women listening right now are like, oh my God, that's so crass. I don't disagree with you. Let me just name that reality. I don't disagree with you. But men and women are not the same. And I'm not even going to say this is toxic. I think in many ways, this is how men are wired. In the same way that women are wired to be more relational. Women have their own conditioning and their own natural biology that is different from men. And I can't say that men's way is wrong and women's way is right. I think what we need to do is do our best to understand how the other person is and find out, okay, if this is the reality of it, then how do we show up conscious of that reality versus just being pissed off or disgusted by the way reality is? And so let me put it this way. When a man meets a woman, often very quickly, often within minutes or sometimes within days or within a couple of dates, he's already categorized if this is a woman for pleasure or if this is a woman for permanence. And he may not even consciously know that. And I'll share this about myself because there was a version of me once that wasn't married, that was a young, kind of dumb kid out there dating and hooking up with women and doing different things. And there were women I dated sometimes for a year, sometimes longer. And I knew in my soul the whole time that this was not a woman of permanence based on the way that she showed up with me. And I wasn't trying to hurt her, but we were complicit in this because I wasn't making her any promises and she wasn't asking for any promises. So we were playing this game where she wanted more from me, thinking she could hang around long enough and have enough sex with me and be pleasing enough to manipulate me into wanting more. And I was playing this game of saying, this is good right now. I'm going to continue enjoying it for as long as it lasts with no intention of permanence. And, if I were to coach myself back then, what would I say? I'd say you're young and you're dumb and you don't really know what's important. And you need to, I don't know if I would have told myself to do it any differently because I think that's how I learned. That's how I grew. But let me put it this way. Every experience I had with a woman like that helped me clarify what I truly wanted in a partner. And when I met my wife, I said, oh, wow, never met a woman like this before. She's not trying to please me. She's not trying to pander to me. She's not sleeping with me right away. She wants to see the investment and the effort, and she wants to see how I show up for her. So now I'm getting into what creates high value. Because a man I was talking to once said it like this, and I thought this was really powerful the way he said it. He said, when I chose my wife, I chose a woman who was honest with me even when it was uncomfortable. I chose a woman who had clear boundaries and clear standards, and expected me to rise to those boundaries and rise to those standards. I chose a woman who would call me out when she didn't feel like something was right, or she felt like she would address things with me. She wouldn't try to brush them under the rug and act like it was all cool. And sometimes it was fucking annoying. And sometimes I didn't want to hear what she had to say. But here's the reality. She didn't care. She said it anyway. She wasn't trying to please me. She was living in alignment with her truth. And even though I didn't always like it, even though it wasn't always comfortable, even though sometimes it was annoying and I was like, do we really have to do this right now? And all of that, even though all of that, what I knew was I could trust her. Because she wasn't fake. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't performing. She was true to herself, and that meant I could trust her to be true to me. And this is, I think, the heart of everything I'm getting at in this episode. It's truly the shift from how do I get you to like me to I'm assessing if you're the kind of partner that I want to be with. So yeah, I'm going to bring up something you don't want to hear. And you might think it's fucking annoying and you don't want to hear it right now. But what I want to know is, can you hold space for it anyway? What I want to know is if you're going to make what's important to me important to you, even when it is annoying. What I want to know is if you're the kind of man who can hold space for my truth, or if you just need someone who's going to bend to your whims and your will and try to meet you on those terms. I know some of the things that I've said today may have made it seem like men are unevolved. There are elements of things I've touched on that could have led maybe some of the listeners to feel that way. And I want to clarify that's not what I'm saying. I think men are evolved differently than women. I also think men are conditioned differently than women. And I think so much of this is context. Because a man who might seem unevolved in his single life, when he commits to someone, that calls forth evolution. This is a mistake I think a lot of women make. Is they want a polished and perfected man. They want someone who's deeply emotionally intelligent and done a lot of inner work and ran his business and made a lot of money, and who dresses nice and looks good and like all of this stuff. They want like a polished, perfected version. And I want to say this, a lot of that is something that happens in relationship with a woman. A lot of times it's his devotion to a woman that calls those things forth from him. Now, I'm not suggesting that a woman take on a project. There needs to be a starting place of ambition. As I said earlier, she needs to assess that he is the kind of man who will step up for her. But you see, a lot of men have never had a reason or an opportunity or a motivation to truly evolve themselves. Especially if they're mostly in a culture of other men. So a woman refines a man. Now here's the question that I'm going to pose to the women who are listening. Do you feel that you are worthy of a man refining himself for you? Are you willing to stand in your power to such a degree that you require that of him, that you call that forth from him? because that's what creates respect. That's when he sees you as a high value partner. So I want to sum up a few things that I've touched on already. And then what I want to do is I want to go into some really specific steps you can take. Some really specific things that present high value. The biggest thing that causes a man to lose sight of your value is being uncertain about who you are and what you offer. So again, I said this earlier, but when you show up as though it's like, what do I have to do to get you to like me? When you're already putting yourself in that position of, I want this, I need this, and I'm going to do anything to make it work. Like, let me just say to all the ladies, the moment you feel that, you can pretty much be certain it's not going to work. And to all you same ladies, let's reverse it. Because there's a certain narrative out there that I think is just really, really unenlightened and really like not with it. So there's a certain narrative that I see on social media. A lot of women talk about it where they say like, oh, well, a real man will be able to hold all of you. Your doubt, your insecurity, your fear, your this, your that. And like, look, let me be real about something. Like, yes, with my wife, we've been together 10 years. I hold all of her. There's nothing that she can bring to me that would ever diminish her value in my eyes. I know her value. I know the human being she is. I devoted my life to her. But let's also be real about something. I didn't propose to her until we'd been dating for 18 months. We didn't get married till we'd been together over 2 years. That was the period where I was experiencing her value and saying, yes, this is the person I want to spend my life with. So is there a reality that a man should hold all of his woman? Absolutely. But to suggest that he should do that on the first date, to suggest that he should do that in the first few weeks, to suggest that there's no responsibility on her part to show up as someone that presents to him the value that she is, that makes him want to devote himself, that makes him want to commit, that's delusional. That's what it is it's an inner child wound, because we all have this little inner child inside of us. There's a little boy inside of me. There's a little girl inside of every woman out there. There's this little inner child that just doesn't feel like they're quite good enough. You know, from being bullied at school, or from not being good enough for their parents, or from being the outcast, or whatever the story is. We all have this little inner child that feels like we're not quite good enough. And what that little inner child wants is they want an unconditionally loving parent to come pick them up and hold them and say, I love you no matter what. In an ideal world, that's what all our parents would have done for us, and that's not what our parents did, most of us. So, but in an ideal world, that's what they would have done. In relationship, we project that wound and we say, I need someone who's going to see all of my insecurity and all of my anxiety and all of my inadequacy, and they're going to love me anyway. And let me say yes. When you've been with your partner for 10 years, absolutely. Yes, when you're to the point where you're getting married and you're committing your lives to each other, yes, by that point, all of that should be on the table. But let's be realistic. Because I know a lot of you ladies have had men who have shown up with you, somewhat desperate to get into a relationship with you, somewhat hoping you like them, hoping you pick them, hoping for your approval, and you weren't attracted to it either. So if it's not attractive to you, then why would you say it should be attractive to someone else? Is he not entitled to the same amount of discernment that you are? Desperation ain't a good look for anyone. And this is the important thing. It doesn't mean that we don't have insecurities. It doesn't mean that we're not sometimes ashamed of ourselves. It doesn't mean that we don't hope they like us or hope the relationship works out. It means that we are skilled at managing that experience rather than dumping that on them. It means that we can own those parts of ourselves and acknowledge those parts of ourselves while keeping them our responsibility rather than making them the other person's responsibility. So some of you might be listening right now and you might be saying, okay, so you're telling me that I shouldn't show up as though I'm trying to please, as though I'm trying to earn my place in their life or win their approval or get them to like me, that I should be secure in what I offer, that I should be secure in my value, that I should be secure in that I'm a high value person, and that I should be assessing whether or not they deserve to be with me rather than me trying to get them to want to be with me. Yes to all of that. And this is the key here. Yes to all of that, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be well managed. So this is what I'll go back to the example I started with. The woman, great connection with this guy, a lot of rapport. They were really excited to meet each other, spend a whole weekend together, and then he starts distancing himself, and she's going, oh my God, what's happening here? I'll just share a few things that she shared about that weekend. She shared that throughout the weekend, she was constantly seeking his reassurance. You know, he would wake up in the morning and be having his coffee and just trying to have a quiet morning. And the fact that they were having a quiet morning and she wasn't getting that immediate validation from him, she'd be like, are you okay? Do you need something? Is there anything I can do for you? Like she couldn't just give the relationship space to breathe, even though they're right there in the room together. Because his silence, if he wasn't giving her his direct attention and validating her and reassuring her, his silence felt to her like emptiness that she needed to fill. There was a fear that in the silence she was losing him and that she needed to do something to pull him back in. And if you spend a whole weekend with someone like that, that doesn't leave you with a good feeling about your future together. He doesn't leave that weekend feeling like this woman is the kind of woman that accurately reflects the way I want to feel about myself. And I love her honesty because she owned it. She said, you know, if someone showed up with me the way that I showed up with him that weekend, I wouldn't be attracted to that person either. So what do we do about this practically? Because I need to name something really, really important here. There's nothing wrong with this woman. She may have sabotaged an opportunity there, but there's not something fundamentally inherently wrong with her. What there is a fear-based nervous system response that took over. And again, where does this come from? Maybe it comes from not fitting in school. Maybe it comes from being rejected by our parents. Maybe it comes from a traumatic past relationship, right? But our nervous system starts to develop these patterns where we say, silence is danger. I can't let the relationship breathe. I need to lean in. I need to control their attraction. A fundamental belief that if I leave their attraction to develop naturally on their own terms, I'm going to lose them. So what would she need to do, or what would anyone in this situation need to do? It's not wrong that she had those feelings. But what she was lacking was the ability to effectively manage them. And that is the very thing that causes us to sabotage. So rather than her saying, okay, this is my trauma, my feelings, my responsibility, rather than dumping them on him as something he needs to take responsibility for reassuring in me, I'm going to manage these feelings. I'm going to be with them. I'm going to resolve them within myself. An important question here is there space for vulnerability? Is there space for her to feel, to share her insecurity with him? Yes, there is. But when she shares it from ownership, rather than a need for him to fill the space that is missing inside of her, that's when it doesn't kill attraction. That can actually deepen attraction. And what does that look like? Well, it normally looks like not talking about it in the moment. It normally looks like revisiting it after the fact. So she might come back in a couple of weeks after she's been sitting with this anxiety, sitting with this fear, sitting in the experience. And she might say something to him, like, can I just share something with you? I've been experiencing a lot of anxiety in this relationship. And, I had past experience where I was cheated on, or I was abandoned, or when my partner was silent with me, that meant they were angry at me, or, whatever's true for her. And she might share with him that, when we have these periods of silence, it makes me a little uncomfortable. And I know you're just doing your thing and I'm working on it, but I just wanted to be honest about that with you. That can actually build attraction. That can actually build trust. Because she's being authentic. She's being vulnerable. She's revealing something insecure about it herself. And what she's subtly communicating in that is, I don't need you to complete me. I don't need you to fill the empty space within myself. I can do that. I can be that for myself. And when I share with you, I'm sharing for the opportunity to create intimacy, rather than because I'm trying to extract something from you. This is maybe the biggest difference here. When you check your motives, are you trying to extract something you need from the person? Or are you trying to deepen the level of intimacy with them? And those two things are not the same thing. Sometimes we confuse them for the same thing. We confuse validation, security, approval with intimacy. That's not intimacy. Now, let's continue working with that example. Let's take that same example. So she comes to him and she says, I want to be honest about an insecurity I have. This is what I've been feeling in the relationship. Maybe she even follows up with a request. Like, I'll just state a common one, not particular from this woman, but just from many of my clients, is, if there's distance between messages, they might say, hey, I just want to be honest. When several hours go by without you replying to a message, I get in my head. I wonder if I said something or did something wrong. And I know that you're just living your life. I know you're just doing your thing, but it would make me feel better if you could make a point whenever you're able to just respond promptly. Even if you just say, hey, I saw you send a message. I'm busy right now, but let me reply later when I can get back to you, right? Like, even just that, when approached from an empowered place rather than a weakened place, even that can deepen intimacy. Even that can deepen security. Now, let's pair that conscious vulnerability, conscious empowered vulnerability, pair that with standards, boundaries, and the willingness to walk away. I want to share an example from another one of my clients. We were just recently talking about this. There's a guy that she's been dating, and they've been talking, and he's been really consistent. Communication has been great, but he's been busy and his car broke down and different things happen, and he hasn't been very available to spend time with her. They've been on a few dates, and there's been gaps in between, and they're tentatively trying to plan something for the weekend. And her friends are saying, hey, do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? Do you want to do this weekend? And she's not making plans with her friends because she's sitting and waiting to see if he's going to confirm plans with her. There's something off in that. And if that kind of pattern continues, she's going to inevitably lower her value in his eyes. When he starts to see she's putting her life on hold, waiting for me and manipulating and bending over backwards to accommodate me, she's subtly placing herself below me in relationship. And that makes him feel like, this isn't the kind of partner who adequately reflects the way I want to feel about myself. So what should she do? Agree to plans with her friends and shoot him a text and say, hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. This weekend isn't going to work. I decided to do something with my friends this weekend. They were reaching out to me. They want to go here. They want to go there. So I'm going to do that. I'd love to see you soon. So, maybe we can set something up for next week. And if we can get it on the calendar in advance, I can make sure that I don't schedule anything else. What's the message in that? The message is, I'm not putting my life on hold for you. I'm someone of value. My time, my energy, my attention, my investment, that's something of value. And if you're not absorbing that, then I'm going to extend it where it's going to be valued. There's a sense of desperation where she's so desperate to secure that weekend with him that she's literally lowering her value in order to do so. There should be an unspoken understanding in every single relationship that if I'm not appreciated, respected, and honored in this experience, I will leave. And that's not something that you ever need to say to somebody, right? So I'm not saying that you go out and you tell people that. It's subtly communicated in every standard you have, in every boundary you have, in the way that you manage your time, in the way that you interact with that person, in the way that you ask for something. You see, there's a difference. Let's say you need reassurance from the person. There's a difference in asking for reassurance from, oh my God, I'm so insecure. I don't know where I stand with you. I feel really uneasy, and I just need you to validate me so that I feel okay. That's one way to ask for reassurance. The irony is when we feel that way, we don't even ask for what we need. We say, is there anything I can do for you? What are you thinking about right now? What do you do? Like we kind of pester the person for attention rather than being clear about what we need and asking for it, which is actually a high value behavior. So you might say, I'll just go back to the text message example. I just want to be honest with you about something. Like, I've noticed that in the last couple of weeks, it's taken you several hours to reply to my texts. I get that you're busy. I get that you have a lot going on. I don't want to disrupt that, but I need to be honest about this because it's not sitting right with me. I don't feel good when I send you something and I'm waiting hours for a response. And I would just really appreciate it if you could make a point to respond when you're able. If occasionally you're not able, that's fine. But when this becomes a pattern, that's something that doesn't really work for me. Now, when you set that standard, what's happening is you're saying, I know what I want in a relationship. I know the kind of reciprocity that I deserve in a relationship. And if you can't provide that, that's okay, but I also know that I need that, so I'm not going to tolerate less than that. They might be annoyed that you're asking, but they're going to respect you more because you know what you want and you're not accepting less. You see, every boundary that you create, every standard that you have is an assertion that I know what I deserve and I'm not afraid to ask for it. And I'm also not sticking around it somewhere where I'm not getting it. And I think sometimes we get so afraid that if we don't pander to the person, we're going to lose them. If we seem like we're too much, too needy, if we ask for too much, we're going to lose that person. The reality is that often not doing that is the reason we lose the person. I just want to touch on a couple more. Something I shared with the woman that I've been mentioning today, the one who spent the whole weekend with the guy. I said this to her. I said, you know, I don't think a man really deserves a whole weekend of your life on a first date. And she was like, holy shit, you're right about that. And I was like, yeah. Right? Like, somebody doesn't get to absorb an entire weekend of your life right out of the gate. That's something that he earns with you. And the beauty is, if you don't allow that, you also have space to separate from him so that you're not sitting there on a quiet morning, ruminating in your anxiety, and then you end up acting out on it and sabotaging the connection. So let's just replay this whole situation for a moment. They've been talking, they've been chatting. He wants to have her go do something with him for a whole weekend. And she says, you know what? I don't really do whole weekends on a first date. I'd love for you to come out here. Let's spend the evening together. And if that goes well, we can plan another one. And she might be like, oh, but it's long distance. And oh, well, he's coming so far and I have to make it worth it. Like, no, you actually don't. In fact, he might be so used to women getting so excited about a whole weekend that when you have that boundary, it's like, whoa, this woman really knows what she wants. I like that. You know what? It's a pain in my ass, but I'm going to go make it happen just because I've never had a woman tell me no. And I want to see what she's all about. A lot of times we're so excited to get that opportunity that we're a little too eager to jump at it. And that's a way that we subtly lower our value. I want to speak to the other side of this too, because there's something I've seen on social media, and I've heard, like, some of my clients have brought this up to me. It's a really strange narrative. But this is one of those things that pretends to be high value, but is really low value. And I want to address it here. This whole narrative about a guy's not taking me out for coffee on a first date. If he wants to take me out, he needs to take me somewhere nice and buy me an expensive dinner. And this is something that masquerades as high value, and it's really low value. Because what you're signaling is that you can be bought. If he's going to take you out to an expensive dinner, well, now you can be bought. The moment somebody can buy you, that makes you low value. I actually have coached a lot of my clients on the opposite. He wants to take you out to a nice dinner. Say, no, I'll meet you for coffee first. Signal to him that you can't be bought. Signal to him that the relationship is going to unfold on your pace and your terms. Why coffee first? Coffee first because you say, I don't want to be stuck at a long dinner in a fancy restaurant with someone I'm not even interested in. What I want is a safe, neutral environment where nobody's spending a lot of money, so there's no energy of anybody buying anyone. He can buy my coffee if he wants to, and that's a nice gesture, right? He's offering what he can. And to the men out there, Especially on a first date, you should fucking pay for it. Like, I think you should. But it's not about the monetary value. It's not that he's spending $200 on dinner. It's that he's paying for your coffee because he wants to show you that, hey, I want to honor that you're here. I want to show you that I'm willing to pick up the bill. I want to show you that I'm willing to take care of you. It's not about the money. It's about the gesture. But you meet him for coffee because you don't want someone to spend $200 on you if you're not interested in them. That's integrity. Yeah, if you're interested in me and I'm interested in you and there's a reciprocity there and you want to treat me to something nice, awesome, that works. But I don't want someone to spend $200 on me if I'm never going to see them again. That's integrity. That means I can't just be bought. It's also a protection that, you know what, if I want to drink a cup of coffee in 15 or 20 minutes and get out of there because this connection is really dull for me, I have that opportunity. I'm not tied to a boring dinner that somebody's spending $200 on, and now I'm stuck here somewhere I don't want to be. That's a boundary. Let's talk about a few other things that pretend to be high value, but are actually low value. Waiting to respond to a text message artificially. Making people sweat. You see, these are the kinds of things that we do when we don't think we're good enough, so we have to manufacture artificial value. Now, we could say this, it could also be low value if you instantly respond to every message. Because what does that signal? It signals that you're waiting by your phone, desperate to hear from the person. It's okay to let it breathe sometimes, but you do that organically, not artificially. People pretend to have plans when they don't have plans. No, I'm not available on Friday. Do something on Saturday. Making people artificially jump through hoops. There's an energy around that too. And you see, whether you're on the desperate side of the spectrum or whether you're on the artificially unavailable side of the spectrum, both energetically signal low value. I hope everybody gets that. There's a principle, a tenet in Buddhism that I just think it applies to almost everything in life. And I constantly say to myself, yep, that's it. It's called the middle way. The answer to everything is always the middle way, because that's the balanced way. I'm not desperate. I'm also not artificially creating unavailability. The reality is, I'm an amazing person with a full life and friendships and commitments and work and things that I'm into. I have authentically limited availability, and at the same time, I'm willing to make myself available when I can. I'm not expecting someone to prove themselves to me with big gestures and expensive dinners. I'm expecting someone to show up at a coffee shop, pay for my $3 cup of coffee, and have a present, grounded conversation with me where we're looking into each other's eyes and forming a human connection. And if they can do that first, and then they want to treat me to a $200 dinner, maybe I'll accept because I'm authentically interested in them. So we're not manufacturing artificial value. We're also not desperate for any amount of attention. We're not pretending that we have no insecurity. But we're also not dumping our insecurity into the other person's lap and making them responsible for it. I hope everybody is gathering all of this. It's the most simple thing when you really think about it, and yet we find it so difficult to master. because we're always at a war with ourselves. Underneath every desperate plea for approval is the deep-seated feeling that I'm not good enough. Underneath every artificial, manufactured signal of high value is the deep-seated feeling that I'm not good enough. And somewhere between those two is a place where we land. We say, I know I'm worthy. I know I'm good enough. I know I'm not perfect. I know I have insecurity sometimes. I also know that I know how to be with my insecurity. I'm also willing to be vulnerable about it while also being responsible for it. I know that I deserve to have someone treat me well and show up for me and invest in me. And when that's not happening, I'm willing to ask for it. And I also know that if me asking for it is something that destroys a relationship, then that's not a relationship that could have really nurtured me the way that I need to be nurtured anyway. And I know that I deserve to be nurtured like that. So while it might be a little disappointing, I'm not that sad about it. It's the marriage of the authentic human experience with a little bit of discipline in how we show up in relationship with others. So I want to end with this note. Being desired is easy, but being chosen is an energy game. There is almost nothing easier for a woman than to awaken a man's desire. It's easy, it's cheap, and it doesn't really amount to much. Awakening his devotion is something else entirely. You awaken a man's devotion by setting the relationship along your pace, by having clear boundaries that you expect to be honored, by having clear standards that you're not willing to compromise on, by expressing authentic vulnerability that you're still responsible for. So thank you for being with me today, everybody. Lots of love and blessings. I hope this episode opened up something powerful for you. And I'll see you back here next week. Take care. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.